So in last video we have learned about basic properties of vector and how vectors are added and multiplied, right? So now this is a new topic where we will learn a new type of operations, as in, till now we always dealt with two vectors at a time. Whenever we had to add two vectors, we have taken two vectors and applied triangle law of addition or parallelogram law of addition, right? Similarly, dot product and the cross product, we did two at a time. Now in physics you will see multiple times there will be more than two vectors are there. For example, multiple forces are applied on a particle, right? So total force applied on that particle will be sum of all the forces. Similarly, such situation can arise in physics. Now how to deal with that? Now one thing is that you can take two forces at a time, find the sum of those two forces, then whatever comes as sum, you add it to the third force and you keep on doing that, right? Now you can easily figure out that this process is very tedious. If you try to do it geometrically, even two vector sum is very tedious, and in algebraically also you have to add two vectors algebraically, find out the third vector, angle with that sum of vector with the other vector, so it becomes very tedious process, fine. So that is why in this topic we will learn how we deal with multiple vectors at a time, fine. Now when you were dealing with numbers, for example, you have to add 5, 3, 2, 1, what you do 5 plus 3, 8, plus 2, you have 10, and plus 1, 11, right? So it becomes very easy. Now with vectors, if you want to add these things, you have to first connect head to tail, find out the resultant, then this, then that, alright? That is one way. The other way could be, you find out, what is this A? A is sum of these two vectors. Let me call it A1 and A2. Okay, so I can say A is A1 plus A2, right? So I can just remove this vector A and I say that A is these two vectors, okay? And similarly, I can say that B is sum of these two vectors. All I have to do is create a triangle, and sum of the two sides of a triangle should be equal to the third side, which is the actual vector, right? I can say that this is B1 vector and this is B2 vector. So since B1 plus B2 is equal to B, so I can remove this vector B. So A is two vectors A1 and A2, and B is two vectors B1 and B2. If you see clearly, you will find out that I have chosen fixed direction horizontally and vertically. I can create triangles, I can create multiple triangles. I can say that this vector is equal to this plus this, or that plus this. I can choose any two combination as long as triangle is being made. But I have taken fixed directions. So slowly you will come to know why I have done that. So C is similarly one direction horizontally and one is vertically. So this is C1 and that is C2. So I can say that C is nothing but C1 and C2. Similarly, D is one horizontal vector, one vertical vector. Now if you look at, I have split 4 vectors into 8 vectors, right? But then adding these vectors is easier now. You can add up all the vectors in horizontal direction, like A1 plus C1 minus B1 minus D1 is the vector along x direction, okay? So this vector you will get as A1 plus C1 minus B1 minus D1, and since they are all along one straight line, you can add it like numbers, fine. and then this vector you will get as A2 plus B2 plus C2 plus D2. Okay, and then if you connect this vector, this is sum of all the vectors. Fine. So in order to add those 4 vectors, I have first split each vectors into 2 fixed directions, and then I have added each direction's vector component separately, right? So that makes the addition of all the vectors simpler. All right. Now this is little counterintuitive, because when you add 5 and 3, you don't first write 5 is equal to 3 plus 2. You know, suppose you have to add number 5 with 3. It's like saying that you first write 5 as 3 plus 2 and you write 3 as 2 plus 1 and then add, right? So with numbers we never do this, we never split it and add. But with vectors, since it has direction, we first split the vectors and then add. Because of that, it becomes very simple to add the vectors. All right, pause karo.